And now, your host, Charlene Chamberlain.
Hi, this is Charlene Chamberlain. Welcome to WTER and Front Row. We're so happy that you're here with us today. My guest is a writer, a producer, a playwright, an actor who has even appeared on many popular TV series and even the soap The Edge of Night. I'd like everyone to say hello and a great big welcome to Jim Rosin. Hi, Jim. Thanks for being on the show today.
Thank you for having me.
It's nice to have you here. Jim is here to talk about one of his books, and in my opinion, this is the go-to guide for anybody that's interested in music, and especially Philadelphia music. It's called The Philly Pop, Rock, Rhythm, and Blues, a look back at the musical history of Philadelphia. And have a gander at the front cover. It features Daryl Hall and John Oates. Jim, how did this come about? What gave you the idea to write this book?
Well, you know, when growing up in Philadelphia, I became very aware of all the, wonderful groups that achieved national success that came from here, from Philly.
Such as.
Well,
oh my God, there's so many.
So
like
there's
Bobby
so many.
Rydell and Orleans.
If you go back, Charlie Gracie was probably one of the first superstars from Philly. Mm-hmm. Bill Haley and his Comets, Lee Andrews and the Hearts, Danny and the Juniors, and then a lot of the pop singers from South Philly. There were so many entertainers that came out of South Philly. Of course, Frankie Avalon,
Fabian, definitely.
Bobby Rydell, Chubby Checker. And then then came the Dovells and the Orleans and the Times and Dee Dee Sharp.
Yeah, Tammy Terrell too, right?
Tammy Terrell, as a matter of fact, went to my high school. She was, I think, about a year and a half ahead of me.
Wow.
Germantown High School, and then she.
I loved her voice.
Yeah, I think she traveled with
singer.
James Brown's entourage for a while, and then she signed with Motown.
Yes.
But she's from
wonderful
Philly.
Hits with Marvin Gaye.
Yeah, she was terrific.
Beautiful.
She was terrific.
I just want to pop in here for a minute. Chubby Checker is going to be in concert on May 2nd at the TD Bank Arts Center in Sewell, New Jersey.
Oh, really?
So if there are any Chubby Checker fans out there, he will be in town.
He's
been around a long time.
Yeah, he has, and he was he was a very talented impressionist, and then also he was a very as we all know, a very talented performer. He, as he said, he changed the way we danced to the beat.
He did.
And he really was quite a phenomenon.
I know.
An innovator of not only the twist, but, the limbo and the pony. And I mean, it goes on and on and on.
I know.
So many new dances.
I know. He certainly was at the forefront of that. The other thing I liked about this book, I mean, it's very, very historical, and it's a very easy read, and it's very, very interesting because there are lots of great tidbits in here. But Jim also put in a section for a lot of the Philadelphia DJs and also the promotion them, which I thought was really kind of nice because people don't know about that backstory and how these records do get on the air, and the DJs that actually helped break these artists.
When I was growing up, you had, of course, WIBG was the rock station, and you had High Lit, Joe Niagara, Bill Wright Sr., Tom Donahue, Harvey Miller, Humble Harvey they called him. It was such a great time, really, and all of those DJs would get out in the community, I should say, and they would perform at the record hops.
That's right.
So you had a familiarity with them beyond their just being on the air.
Yeah, they were actually, stars in their own right.
Yeah.
And they had their followings.
And Georgie Woods and Jocko Henderson, and then, of course, Jerry Blavitt became also a very, very popular DJ. I think he began at WCAM in Camden.
But didn't Jerry Blavitt, wasn't he a dancer on...
He was on Bandstand with Bob Orr.
Right.
He was a member of the committee, the select group of dancers.
Dancers, right, the featured dancers.
Dancers, and then I think he was a road manager for Danny and the Juniors, and then he embarked on a career in broadcasting, and
right.
That was around 1960, 61. I think he started WCAM, and he's still going.
I know.
Jerry is a terrific guy. unbounded energy, and he still has quite a following, and he loves what he does, and it kind of shows.
I know. Yeah, I do see him on the air quite a bit.
Yeah, yeah, and you know, the newer group of people. There's some, you know, you have of course, at WVLT in Vineland, you have Lou Costello.
Oh, absolutely.
Lou Costello is a terrific showman.
He is. He's great.
He hosted the Wildwood Fabulous 50s for, I think, 3 or 4 years in a row, and he came out in different
he does a costume change. He's got the greatest outfits.
He has such a personality on stage.
Yeah, he's
and
great.
He was terrific. He wowed 7,000 people that came to see those concerts. Bob Pantana was great too. Bob has
a legend.
He's Mr. Saturday Night. He has that dance party in
Philadelphia.
At Adelphia is every Saturday night, and he travels around the Delaware Valley doing different events. He too. He has limitless energy, Bob, and he loves what he does, and he's terrific.
And what I want to say about these DJs, you know, they've been around a long time, and they are actually keeping this music alive. They really are.
Yeah, they are.
You know,
yeah.
Do you find, or do you feel that younger people are now discovering this? Or is it still the older crowd that grew up with that are going to these events and dances?
I think it's predominantly the
original fans,
the baby boomers and older, but the nice thing about it is you do see younger people, you know, enamored with the music.
Right.
You know, if not the 50s music, the 60s and the 70s music. At Adelphia, Bob brings in a lot of younger age people as well as the older crowd.
Well, that's nice to hear.
Yeah, and a lot of the events that Lou does, Lou Costello, you find a mix, but I would say predominantly the older. Yeah, they're definitely keeping it alive, you know.
And I think that's a great thing, because you have to have that prosperity. You have to know where it came from.
Yes.
You really do.
Yes, and our friend George Manny. George is a terrific man. He's a talented musician. He's an archivist. He's a historian, and he's done so much to keep alive the history of music, not just the nationally known groups, but also the locally known groups that played in the coffee houses and got record deals, and you know, he really opened my eyes to the fact that they are as much a part of the Philadelphia music tapestry as anyone else.
Absolutely, and George, I know, is still working on his film. It's been 10 years in the making, his documentary. So I'm hoping that within the next year, maybe he'll be able to finish it. Wrap it up. He's pure of heart when it comes to wanting to keep the music alive, and just a wealth of information as to the different band members, and you know, his band too, the Last Minute Jam Band, that played at Dobbs for so many years. Right.
I think probably the longest running music bands in Philadelphia.
I know.
Legendary Dobbs on South Street.
That's right. We're the legendary Last Minute Jam Band. So let's hop on to some of these other books. You've written how many books? 6, 7, 8 books?
I've done about 8 books on classic TV shows, having been an actor and a writer in TV.
Well, let's talk about that first. You were an actor in Hollywood and in New York?
Yeah, I spent 11 years in LA, and I was...
What shows did you work on?
Oh gosh, the first show that I did was an episode of a comedy series called Love American Style.
Oh, sure, I remember that.
Used to come on Friday nights.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah, and I
can hear the theme song right now going through your head.
Yeah, I love, and it was an episode with Phyllis Diller.
Oh boy.
And the director was Jack Donahue, who had done tons of I Love Lucy episodes. He was great.
And what did you play?
I played a lawyer, and Tom Bosley was in it from Happy Days. Played her husband. Love and the Comedian, it was called. And then I worked on Mannix with Mike Connors.
Oh yeah, sure.
I did a few of those. Adam 12 with Marty and Kent McCord.
Oh, I watched that a lot. Adam.
That was the first big police show, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a Jack Webb series. I did a few of those also. Banachek, which was also Universal with George Papard. He was an insurance investigator. And my friend Ralph Manzer played his chauffeur. And then I was on Quinn Martin's show Cannon with William Conrad. That ran for 5 or 6 years. You know, we had all those shows. Barnaby Jones, the FBI, later the Streets of San Francisco.
Barnaby Jones.
Yeah, Buddy Ebsen. He was a nice man.
I have a funny Buddy Ebsen story. When I was living in California, we lived in Corona del Mar, and we had a little dinghy. So we were taking the dinghy out into the, dock, taking it out of the marina, and we ran into Buddy Ebsen's boat.
Really?
Yeah. But he had a big boat. We had this little dinghy that we were in, and he said, "Oh, that's okay, ladies. Don't worry about it. It's okay."
He was quite a man, quite a dancer. And when I was talking to him one day on the Goldwyn Lot, he was talking about I told him I was from Philadelphia, and he was talking about the Mass Bomb Theater, how he performed there. He was the original Tin Man in The Wizard of Oz, believe it or not.
I had no idea.
What was this, Buddy Ebsen was?
Buddy Ebsen, and he was replaced by, I think, Jack Haley,
right?
Because he was severely allergic to asbestos, and which is what they used to coat the costume.
Wow, about that.
What else? Then I was in some mini-series that were on. Loose Change was one. Once an Eagle was a series with Sam Elliott. Glenn Ford was in it. Melanie Griffith. And then a bunch of Quincy's.
You were on a lot of Quincy's episodes.
Yeah.
Did you have a recurring role on Quincy? No. No, it was just a lot of... were they mostly character roles, or?
I played a policeman in a couple. I was a track coach in one. I was a doctor in one. I was.
They must have liked you at Quincy.
Well,
yeah, it's like you showed up, right?
Yeah, and having written some of the episodes gave me in, and sometimes I would write a role for myself in an episode. I did. And T.J. Hooker I did with Bill Shatner, and another series called The Powers of Matthew Starr, which was with Louis Gossett Jr. and Peter Barton. Peter went on and did Burke's Law with Gene Barry. He did the remake of that, played his son. I don't know what became of Peter. Those are basically the shows I did,
And how many years were you in California?
I was 11.
11 years.
And then 9 in Manhattan.
So did you make the move from Philadelphia to California?
I went Philly, L.A., New York.
So,
and then I went back and forth.
So, but your initial move to California was for acting?
Yes.
Basically.
And then I eventually got into writing,
Right, while you were out there.
Became a double threat man.
A double threat.
Bob Urich, God rest his soul, he's such a nice man,
Bob Urich.
Robert Urich, yeah, he called me once. Yes, he was on a bunch of shows.
Yes.
Vegas and Spencer Fryer. Nice man, handsome guy. He called me a double threat man once.
Right.
Because I was on opposite him, and I saw him at the airport one day. He was picking up his wife. I said, "Bob, I'm on opposite you tonight." And I wrote the show. He said, "Oh, you're a double threat man." Yeah, he left us too early.
Yeah, he passed away early.
Yeah,
that's right.
So after the Hollywood years, then you made the move. You physically made the move to New York.
Yes.
But you were still going cross country for jobs.
Oh yeah, I would go out to California if I got a job. I would fly out there. Yeah.
Right. So when you went to New York, what were you focusing on? Was it theater or still television?
I wanted to work in theater. I wrote a play and I did it, produced it off Broadway, and I did 2 or 3 more plays off Broadway. And
how'd that go?
It was fun. It was nice. And then I did a little bit of summer stock in New England, in Vermont, and worked on The Edge of Night a little bit. And
let's talk about that. The Edge of Night. Does anybody remember that soap opera, The Edge of Night?
Yeah, that was a good show. Yeah.
What did you play on The Edge of Night?
Well, they had me on twice. Once I was a hunter in the woods. And I actually was supposed to shoot Frances Fisher.
Oh, really?
Who's in a series now called Resurrection.
Right.
She's a great gal, Frances. And she has a daughter by Clint Eastwood, as a matter of fact, who's an actress now, too. Looks just like her. And I didn't want to shoot Frances. So I told the director, I said,
I can't.
Why don't you give it to the other guy in the scene? So he shot Frances was a detective on the show,
boy.
And the character accidentally shoots her in the woods.
Oh boy!
And so I get kind of upset, and I go over and, "Geez, what'd you do?" And it was that kind of thing. And then I think a year later they brought me back again, and I was in a few episodes. I played this character Eddie. He was a bartender.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did you like the soap work? Did you find that different than the series work, or was it similar?
Well, I didn't have a lot to do in the soaps, but it's different in the respect that you have a lot of responsibility, because as opposed to an hour show or a half-hour show, which they do one a week, like they would do a half-hour show in 3 days, they would do an hour show in 6 to 7 days. A daytime drama, they do 1 per day.
Yeah, that's on every day, too.
So you have a tremendous amount of memorization.
Lines.
But what began to happen in the soaps is they began to build up the cast. So you have an ensemble cast. So that meant, less responsibility to memorize because a lot of it went to other actors.
Yes.
But still, it's a grind.
It's a lot every day.
You come in and you rehearse, and then you rehearse.
Run through.
You block for the camera, and then you do a dress rehearsal, and then a taping.
You run it.
And then you come back the next day, and
It is what it is.
It's very good experience. It's my friend Roy Finnis, who was on The Invaders. He was in General Hospital for I think 3 or 4 years, and he said it was a tremendous training ground.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, you really have to think on your feet all
Yes.
the time.
Yes.
So, out of all of these books, what are your top favorites?
It's
What
hard to
were
say.
you
I
to
love them
work
all.
on?
I love them all.
What's your go-to one?
Well, I always loved Route 66
Well, let's
because
talk about Route 66. Here's
because-
Route 66. Do you remember this show?
Do not remember that show.
yeah, Martin Milner,
Talk a little bit about
George
Route 66.
Maharis.
Yep.
They filmed it all over the country, and it was on 4 years. George left this show in the middle of the 3rd year because he became ill with hepatitis, and
Oh.
after he left, the show really went downhill because he was such a vital part of the success of the
right.
show. And it was unique. It was filmed on location. They brought in wonderful guest stars. The writing was terrific. There was rich character development. The backdrop of America, was there as opposed to the back lot of a studio.
Yes.
And there was never a show done like that again. It was unique. And then they did the counterpart, a police drama in New York, Naked City,
Okay, I'll show this
which
too.
the
Here's
same
Naked
producer,
City.
Herbert Leonard. Herbert Leonard originally did Rin Tin Tin, and then he did Circus Boy with
Mickey Dolenz.
with Mickey Dolenz, yeah.
From the Monkees.
And he did a show called Rescue 8, and then he
don't
did
remember that.
The Lives of the Bengal Lancers. They were all half-hour shows, and then he got the rights to do Naked City, and it was a half-hour show with James Franciscus and John McIntyre, and then it came back as an hour show. James Franciscus did not return, and Paul Burke became the lead. Horace McMahon, Harry Belivar, Nancy Malone. Again, that was a show with rich character development, filmed on the streets of New York with a very stark arrestedness, and you couldn't take a bad picture when you were filming in New York.
No.
I remember Paul Burke, God bless him. He said to me, New York was really the 3rd star of the show.
Yeah.
And one time he
Sure.
remembered the cameraman telling him, "Paul, move a foot to your right. You're upstaging the Chrysler Building."
That's pretty funny. How about Wagon Train? I remember that show.
Wagon Train was
let's look at that.
was a terrific show
Wagon Train.
with Ward Bond and Robert
Your
Horton
Western
initially.
favorite.
Yeah, that was about people traveling from Missouri to California, and it was again stories about people. In fact, the title of each episode was someone's name, the Jennifer Churchill story, or
Right.
the Malachi Hobart story. And there was a tremendous chemistry between Ward Bond and Robert Horton. They were like Gable and Tracy in a way.
Really?
And then he died. Ward Bond died in the middle of the 4th year, and they brought in John McIntyre, and Robert Horton stayed for another season, and then Robert Fuller and Denny Miller, Denny was in the show already, but they kind of took over with John McIntyre, and it remained on the air for 8 seasons.
8 seasons?
And one season they filmed in color. They went 90 minutes. But that was my Western,
Yeah. When you decide to write a book like this, how long does it take you from start to finish? Does it
could take-
depend on each project
Yeah,
and
it
how
can
much
take
research material you
7-8
have?
months. It can take a year. It depends.
Right.
Gathering all the information and interviewing the people that are still around, and,
Right.
and then watching all the shows. And
That's true.
this was
Yeah.
interesting because this was Roy Finnis was is a very fine actor. He had been on a series called The Long Hot Summer, where he played Ben Quick with Edmund O'Brien and Nancy Malone, who was also had been on Naked City.
Right.
And Quinn Martin picked him to play the lead in The Invaders, which was a sci-fi series about a group of aliens that land on Earth, and he tries to convince the disbelieving world that they're here. And it was done with a minimum of special effects.
Really?
When they were shot, they disintegrated, but there was not a lot of special effects to upstage the drama. And
like the CGI graphics. And all
yeah, oh, they had none of that at the computer graphics at that time, and it was very unique. It was very realistic in that it was about paranoia, and Roy gave a very edgy portrayal, and a lot of people. David Vincent was his character's name, and it was only on for 2 years, but it became a cult series, and people remembered it.
Do you think it's still available, like through Netflix?
It's on DVD.
Okay.
All these shows are out on DVD now.
Wow.
Most of them.
Right.
This just came out on DVD, and this was
I
of
remember
course
that show.
a
Streets
great
of San
show
Francisco.
because there was a great chemistry between Carl Malden and Michael.
Yeah.
Michael was very helpful to me when I did the
It's
book.
Michael Douglas.
Yeah, terrific guy, very likable, and the backdrop was the city of San Francisco, and they filmed it on location there, and Quinn Martin again produced it, and it just had a very, very
Real
good
feel to it.
Yeah, real feel to it. Tremendous chemistry between the actors, good scripts, good guest stars, and they moved very quickly, and they were able to, I guess, start in June and be finished by December. They had a very fluid cameraman, and they traveled all over the city, and it was great because, again, they had the most picturesque town in America as the backdrop. And this was my show.
Let's talk about Quincy, because I know you were on a few episodes of Quincy, and you wrote several episodes.
I did 6 as an actor and 3 or 4 as a writer, and he was my mentor. He was a tremendous influence in my life.
Yeah.
He was a wonderful man. He was from South Philadelphia.
He was. I didn't know that.
Yeah. I learned so much from him, and he loved doing shows about social issues and relevant drama, about rape, about domestic abuse, about airplane safety, about autism, about Tourette syndrome, about gun safety. The list goes on and on and on. Any legislation was passed, some laws were enacted because of shows that Jack wanted to do. And he battled Universal Studios.
Right, here it is. Here's Quincy.
He battled the networks who thought the idea of doing relevant storylines was not in their interest.
So he really wanted to have a special message come out of each show.
And the audience loved it, and eventually they left him alone.
Such a passion.
Yes.
He always was doing this when he was talking, and he just had such a passion, and he was trying to tell people this is the picture, but this is the real picture of what you should be seeing. It was amazing.
Yes.
Exactly what you're describing.
Yes, he was. Well, you hit the T on that. He was very professional. He had a tremendous work ethic, and he was very passionate about what he did. He never wanted to sell his audience short. And he was responsible for the show remaining on the air for
all those years.
I say 7 seasons. Some of the pundits say 8, but I counted the first season where they did 5 90-minute shows, then a 2-hour one, and then 10 one-hour shows in 1 year. So I counted that as a season.
Right.
But God rest his soul, and he was a terrific man.
Was Quincy the first medical show that was on?
Marcus Welby,
Marcus Welby, right.
Well, I go way back. I'll tell you, I go back to Dr. Kildare.
Oh, Dr. Kildare, that's right.
In the 60s, when I was in high school and college, Dr. Kildare and Ben Casey were there.
Ben Casey.
Vince Edwards was Ben Casey, and Richard Chamberlain and Raymond Massey were Dr. Kildare and Dr. Gillespie. That was filmed at MGM, and they were the groundbreaking medical show in the 50s was with Richard Boone, who later did Have Gun Will Travel. He did a series called Medic, where he played a doctor, and he was also the narrator. And he would appear in some of the episodes and narrate others. He played a character named Dr. Conrad Steiner. It was on ABC, and it was really on the vanguard of what was going on. And they showed some very, very controversial medical topics on that show.
Wow.
That's the first one that I remember.
And what was that, the 50s?
That was mid-50s, yeah. I was a little kid, but I remember seeing it. And then in the 60s, of course, you had the other shows I talked about.
Right.
Yeah.
So, Jim, what are you working on now? I heard that you're working on a screenplay.
I'm writing a screenplay. It's about a boy and a problem he has in a small town, a rural Midwestern town, and I have high hopes for it. I think after seeing movies like Nebraska and Inside Llewellyn Davis, it really gives me inspiration.
It has a story that can be told.
The script is done, and I'm now in the process of marketing it and submitting it to some of the people out in LA.
And how hard is it to
keep your fingers crossed?
I will. How hard is it to do that, to actually submit?
It's hard because if you don't have an agent and you haven't written.
Now that would be a literary agent?
Yeah, you have to have a literary agent, and because most companies won't read something that's unsolicited.
Yes. Okay.
It has to come through an agent, and also it also helps if you've written other things that have been sold.
Mm-hmm.
So
you should have a track record.
What's helped me is the fact that I've written for several different TV shows.
Plays, right?
Yeah, the TV shows are the important thing, and then it narrows the field down, but it's very difficult, because let's face it, they are looking for something, because everything is predicated on the printed page. Mm-hmm. By the same token, there's a lot of people writing scripts and trying to get them done. Sure. So they're besieged. Mm-hmm. But I would say a lot of the things on, being done on television are very innovative, and and there are some very creative people writing today in TV. And there's always good films coming out. You have your action adventure genre and your sci-fi
your
pictures
horror.
And horror and black comedy. You also have some very good, human dramas, people stories.
And great independent films now too.
Yes.
See, technology has certainly allowed a regular, normal person that's not necessarily trained as a filmmaker to actually express their creativity and make a film and make a statement.
Exactly.
Which is very interesting, because we just had some young filmmakers in here. What was it, a couple weeks ago?
Yeah.
Velocity Films. They have a short that they created that actually is going to be screened in France at Cannes. So,
Cool.
1 out of 30.
There's a lot of young, talented people that they go they come out of film schools in LA and New York, and they know how to use a camera, and they're very creative, and they know how to express themselves with that camera. And a lot of camera work now is going to digital.
Yes.
And it kind of facilitates editing, and I still think there are a lot of purists that love shooting with film and swear by it, but
right.
I think.
But its film is very expensive too.
It is, and this eliminates shooting digitally, eliminates purchasing film stock, and changing the stock periodically. I think when we were doing TV, every 10 minutes you would have to change
the
film.
Reel, right?
So the business is like the music industry. It's changing, and there's innovation, and
people are owning it.
Yeah, and it's really it's interesting to watch and to experience, and
And the other thing I've noticed that a lot of these writers, hopeful writers, are pitching these projects on a lot of the online fundraising sites like Kickstarter and Indiegogo, and they're actually getting funding to get their projects into development, which is pretty great, because they're not only, they're getting money from anybody and everybody all over the world, so everybody is actually embracing what they're doing, which would not have happened even 10 years ago.
No, it's good to see, and I would say to anyone that's aspiring to be an actor or a writer or a director, I would say if you're inspired, if you're an inspired performer, an inspired director, an inspired writer, I would say go for it, because I think that's half the battle, and it enables you to get beyond the disappointments and the heartache and the rejection, because you have something visceral inside you that keeps you going, that need to create, that need to express.
Right.
And I think that's what separates the people that persevere and the people that give up and just go on to something else, because it is a very, very difficult business.
You just have to keep trying.
Lots of competition.
Yeah, there definitely is. Well, that is wonderful advice. And I would like to thank Jim Rosin for being with me today. It was so wonderful to have you on the show. Thank you for all this great information and a flashback to all of these great, fun, old television shows. It's making me feel old, but that's okay.
You're still a young lady, Charlene.
Well, thank you.
Thank you for having me.
It was my pleasure. Thanks for being on Front Row. This is Charlene Chamberlain for WTER. Thanks for watching, and thanks for listening.